Christine, just in terms of where we are now, do you believe that we have the best possible framework in place in order to enable this? And if not, we've talked a lot really today about some of the blockages, some of the things, you know, why are we not moving as fast as we need to? Do you see areas where there are shortcomings we need to address?
Good afternoon to you and all the audience, first of all. And you will have to bear with me. I need to do this with you together here without having my usual caffeine injection.
Oh, we can get you one if you want one brought to you.
No, but the topic is passionate, as everybody in the room can agree with me. And coming to your question, I think on the one hand, one should not forget that a lot has been achieved over the past 15 years in Europe on airspace modernization. I think people realize that when they go outside Europe and they realize how much we are admired for what has been achieved, which is also something when we speak within the European bubble, we tend to forget because we are so much dedicated to improvement and constant improvement that we look at the issues we are wrestling with, but sometimes, and I think a conference like this one should also be an occasion to realize that we have achieved a lot. We have created a legal framework. We have air navigation service providers who are subject to performance regulation, which means they are incentivized to act like industries and like companies. In other parts of the world, it's just like a state says, well, whatever it costs, and the airspace user pays for it. No, we have a legal framework for that. We have a joint undertaking. This SESAR joint undertaking in its 3rd edition has from the very beginning been very closely linked to policy making. The ATM master plan, which ultimately is endorsed by the union and all the states of the union, for instance, is a very close link of the SESAR joint undertaking. Again, I don't see any other region. I'm not speaking about Next Gen and the FAA and the US. This is a country, but I'm not aware of any other region in the world where this has been achieved. We have also, in this joint undertaking, achieved what the other generation of joint undertakings you just heard in the hot seat discussion about. With this link, the SESAR joint undertaking always have also helped the European Commission in further developing a vision by doing crucial things like the airspace architecture study, which is something which has built the foundations for the digital European sky, which has been, you know, one of the models we tried to accompany with SES2+ in our regulatory reform. So I think from that perspective, a lot has been achieved, and the recent ICAO assembly has also demonstrated that many of our contributions when it comes to future airspace management have been supported, and we have been really successful there because many of those ideas and many of the things that were discussed had their origin in SESAR. So that is...
Come back on perhaps where, if anywhere, you see room for improvement. But I think, as you say, important to mark and acknowledge what we have done because of that tendency to be self-critical always.
Yeah, I think we have improved, especially very recently, on things which were there as a problem. We had this gap between the development phase in research and the deployment phase.
We've talked a lot about that, and I want to come back to that later.
I'm sure we will come back to that. But with the SESAR 3 joint undertaking, the digital sky demonstrators, the presence of EASA as a future certifying authority in the SESAR 3 joint undertaking, the the closer link and the new SESAR deployment manager we have created, plus the common Project One mandating certain technologies, we really over the past 3 years have advanced. I think there are things now where it becomes important to deliver, but overall, and we are still missing on the regulatory framework, and I can later on explain what in particular is missing.
Okay.
But in terms of link to policies and advancement, in particular in the recent past, we have made together quite, as a network, quite a step.
Thank you. Thank you. Anna, would you share that positive assessment of the progress we've made? We'll come on to the shortcomings in a moment.
Good afternoon. Yes, I think I do. Actually, my opening statement was very much in line with what Christina has just mentioned. I think we do have most of the elements. We have achieved a lot of things. If you look at the last 10 or so years that we've been working together in SESAR, we have achieved a number of things. Nevertheless, we've heard this morning also that there's a number of things which we need to focus on more. We need to prioritize the challenges that have been posed to us the last couple of years, the last month, and what we have ahead of us is not easy, and we can only achieve those if we do work together. We have to refocus maybe certain things, we have to reprioritize certain things, but we also have to collaborate more, and I think that was a big buzzword this morning, collaboration, but we have to find ways of how we collaborate maybe better and how we work our system better that we have most of the elements for. So this collaborative approach has to go through, and I think one major thing, and I think it's very important and it's a very good signal that EURECA, as a standardization organization, is now a member of an observer of the governing board of the SESAR 3 program. We are very, very closely working with EASA, with the European Commission, with many of the members of the SESAR program, and many other partners. But we have to see how we can even better collaborate. We have to create awareness that it's not over when the SESAR R&I work is over. We have to go that step towards deployment. And that involves standardization and regulation and creating a framework that will enable a proper deployment.
I want to come back on that standardization issue, which is, of course, what you focus on, what your organization focuses on in a moment. But Jussi, complete the picture for me in terms of your assessment of where we are and what's good, where we might need to address certain shortcomings.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. And I need to first make one promise. I'll tell Luke Titkat that you all miss him a lot, so I'm sorry Luke couldn't come here today. I would start by being very like-minded with both ladies who spoke earlier, but I would take a bit different approach in the sense and say that I think we have all the ingredients. And all those who prepare food at home, you know that ingredients are needed, but then there are certain other things. Or maybe it goes a bit also towards what Anna said, that we have the ingredients, but I think that we also have a tendency maybe to speak and plan more than we do. And I think that on the doing side, there's still some missing, and because this is not the first time we discuss these issues, and this is not the first challenge we have ahead of us. And when looking at past, I mean that I'm not sure how good we are in doing the hard talk. I mean that would the U-turn or crossroad, would we have needed a checkpoint somewhere and do something different? That I think is okay, we will continue on that, but I think that the ingredients are good. I agree with Christine. I think that even at global level, we are good. We have the players. Sometimes I feel that we might even have too many players. So even sometimes simplification could be an asset, but yeah, by and large I agree. A lot has been achieved. We have an excellent system, largely in theory, also well in practice, but I believe there's still room to do.
Christine, can I come back on this question of the regulatory framework and what is missing? You pointed to that and offered to say a few words about that.
Yeah. Maybe, I'll try to deal with it on two levels. One level is SES 2+. I think you had Mr. Marinesco there in the morning, and I think we just seen a video about use space, etc. I think it has to be very clear that we need SES2 Plus to improve the network dimension of SES. We need SES2 Plus to improve the performance regulation on the air navigation service providers. These are the monopolists because they are designated by the state. And here it's also important to create the conditions for the use space to take off, because we have created under the EASA basic regulation, which is the second big pillar next to SES on the legislation side. We have created, from a technical perspective, a regulatory framework for a drones market and the use space to take off, but we have not created the conditions by which we regulate who gets access to which data. How is this data provided by those who have them now, the monopolists, under which pricing conditions, and how are situations to be dealt with, which we will have very soon, theoretically as of next year, when the new legal framework enters into force, where one player is an ANSP, an air navigation service provider, is a common information service provider for the use-based service provider and a use-based service provider themselves. Now, without a European framework, we won't have a level playing field. We will have different frameworks evolving nationally. And we will have basic treaty principles competition law applying also to the ANSPs. Well, that is only one dimension why I think, speaking to an audience here of SESAR committed to innovation, this is important that we should advance. Another example I want to bring is the regulatory level, so not the level where Parliament and Council have to negotiate, but the level where, for instance, with our deployment mandates, the common project regulations, we are imposing certain things. Now, for the past 15 years, ever since SESAR 1 existed, we have been adding, and for good reasons, technology layer after technology layer out in the infrastructure that is needed to have air navigation services provided. We have never taken out anything which is old. The entire infrastructure, which is the old stuff, plus all the high-tech new stuff. Think of satellite technologies, which makes even redundant some of the old stuff. We have never decommissioned anything. So this is something where even I think from a research and development perspective, one has to look into how decommissioning can be incentivized. Now, I'm not saying we only need everything satellite-based. We need, I mean, safety must never get out of sight. But we have to define regulatory concepts dealing with resilience, redundancy, that allow us also to take out elements which are no longer used. And let's not forget it, the airspace users are paying for everything. They are paying for things which are there since the Second World War, and they are paying for the new things.
So why have we never done it?
Good question. I don't know. I don't have the answer.
Let me just bring another element into this, and that of standardization and this next generation of standards that are needed. What do those standards need to look like, Anna, and why is this so important as part of the drive to accelerate, to mobilize this transformation?
It's a very good question. I think there's not a one-size-fits-all answer. If we look around the room and along some of the projects that we've seen presented earlier on, there's some which are going use-based, eVTOL, etc. That's a completely different type of stakeholder industry. They have different innovation cycles. They have different approaches to innovation. So we've looked at also adapting our standards development process and the outputs that we produce and develop together with EASA in a way that we are quicker, that we can actually get standards out within a couple of months, sometimes even, whilst still maintaining the high quality levels that we need, because in the end, these are all standards for safety critical things. And I agree with Christina. I mean, this is the fundamental layer of all of it is the safety, right? And then we have standards for virtual centers, I think was mentioned this morning as one of the flagship initiatives, really, where we have to look at projects that are being still in the R&I phase, that are still in the R&D phase, but where we can work a lot earlier together. And in the past, we've always had this, oh, it's too early, it's not mature enough, we can't go into standardization, we can't even think about regulation. But I think we have good examples where we have worked a lot closer together. Take remote tower, for example, where we followed an incremental approach, standardization or the standards being developed in parallel with the R&D, progressing further and further and further. And I think this is really important, that we do work earlier together, that we plan earlier together, and that we agree earlier and agree together whether we need a standard on certain things or not. Maybe we don't need a standard for certain things. Maybe it's good that there's a free and, but when we do need a standard, we need to agree on the scope of the standard, and we need to agree on the timelines, and we need to agree on how we get to the point where we have something.
And is the system for getting those agreements on those basic elements, when do we need them? Well, should we first, and when, and so on? Is that working as well as it could, or are changes needed?
Both. I think it's working quite well in most areas, but I think we can always do more and we can always do better. We have this European ATM Standards Coordination Group, the EASCG, which we've had for 7 or 8 years in the meantime, which is good, which is changing a little bit by looking at more identifying standardization needs and how we can track that throughout the process. But also there's this new initiative coming out from the Joint Undertaking now for a technical coordination group, which I think is really important, because it creates this awareness, it creates a more strategic look at what is needed and when, and that we take that decision together with all the main players involved, with the EASA being there, the Commission being there, the main Joint Undertaking, obviously, and looking a bit more systematically at this, and having also by this then the commitment and the buy-in from the industry, from the SESAR members, going forward, and then we can support that in a better way.
Thank you. You see, we've heard there about the legislative and the regulatory framework and the role of standardization. Your reaction to what you've heard on those 2 points, but also, is there anything missing from this equation when we look at creating the environment that really incentivizes this research and innovation in the most effective way possible?
I would wish to bring in 2 items, but again, not so. I think we research enough. I think our challenge now is not that we wouldn't research and have enough innovation. I think the challenge is the getting things done. The change management, to deploy things, to implement things. Two thoughts there. One, of course, what Anna also said, that there is this question of early involvement. I mean, that this year is the first year when, for example, we have some kind of a resourcing in order to be early involved in that issue, because we simply haven't had that tradition. We haven't had that resourcing, we haven't had that financing. Airside finance, we get a subsidy for those so-called core processes we have, and then fees and charges when we oversee and certify something. We've always known the SESAR part, but now, thanks to the Commission, the good collaboration we have, we are getting more involved on that issue. And that brings the situation that there are different phases of the process where we ask that do you need rules? And first of all, there's not a silver bullet answer to that, because we don't create the needs for rules. Rules have a certain purpose. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, you need to know how do you protect the people, passengers, everything. So it's not so easy. I've been working for the last 35 years in this domain, and I've been singing the same song, that the ATM is different, we are different, we always want to be different. But sometimes when looking look at the flying objects today, Whatever kind of new things are coming out, industry comes to EASA, tells that we have this kind of a design, what would be the basis to certify, and so there's fundamental trust. And that is looked at, we are together looking at what would be needed for safety and so on. And in most cases, there's not a single new line in the rules. It is in the specifications. And even if we want to be different, could we learn something from that? Couldn't we try to deploy, implement also based on that the discussion takes place earlier, there's a common will to do it, and you don't need a rule which takes several years to come into an agreement between the states and the industry, and everybody's happy, and staff unions, everything. I think that we could also have new ways how to approach that whole equation.
Thank you. I want to come out to the room, but Christina, reaction to that, and I saw you chuckle wryly when you talked about ATM being different. Why did you chuckle wryly?
Yeah, because in a long commission career, I've been dealing with many sectors where always technology, law, and money came together, and all these sectors claimed that they were special and they are different. And I wonder if you tell this to millennials, and I don't know whether we have some of them even in the room, they would definitely shake their head, because the future is data, the future is virtualization, the future is artificial intelligence, the future is algorithms, and look at where we are still in a day-to-day environment on ATM. Now, I think the digital single sky concept, or digital European sky concept, has embraced this future. But I think when it comes to data sharing, when it comes to also creating frameworks that deal with the necessary, you have to resolve liability issues, you have to resolve many things, but they can be resolved, and we have seen other safety critical industries where this has been done, including in medicines, for instance, etc. So this inward looking perspective, saying that we are special, is also something which from the European Commission perspective we are basically attacking, with the fact that the SESAR joint undertaking now is in a legal act together and shares many things together with other joint undertakings. Because in this world that moves us towards the digital world, underlying technologies, underlying standards, not every community has to reinvent the wheel.
It was a point that somebody made in the last session.
Exactly.
Where can we cross-fertilize, as it were?
So the role of SESAR is to turn this into applications which can be deployed by the sector. But I think on the fundamental level, what is needed to make this vision a reality is there. It's adapting it. So if you so want, in the old RTD concept, the R is not the focus on. The technological development, the adaptation to the sector is the thing that is at the focus of what needs to be done.
Just one other thought before I go out to the room. In all our panels today, we've talked about new entrants and the challenges that they pose in terms of ATM modernisation. And I was very struck by something I think it was Marcel said in the last session, where he said, we tend to focus on, what's it going to be like when the sky is full of these things? And instead of doing all that we can to enable this to get started, to get going. He said, no, we need to create the right environment to get it going, and then we'll deal with the issues as they emerge instead of, and I drew the analogy of, there's a lovely saying, one of my favourite sayings, which is when you're trying to eat an elephant, take bite-sized chunks. Jussi, for you, would you agree that when it comes to new entrants, what's the approach we need to take to really create the best possible environment while dealing with these multiplicity of complexities and challenges it poses?
I'm not absolutely sure what you would wish to see here as new entrants, but if I look at what's happening now with the drones and U-space, and also in our case, it just happens to be the case that we have a different whatever it is, department or unit or people who deal with that issue. And it's a novelty, and it's a huge challenge. But in a way, I feel that they are allowed to do things which we are not allowed to do, because we have a tradition to do things differently. And in the final end, with all the other, because aviation is created by domains, I mean that somebody loves the aircraft, somebody loves the air operation, and somebody something else. It has been easy to say to those colleagues that, hey, yes, ATM, we are different. But now when I have these colleagues who are dealing with drones and U-space, I start to think that, in fact, they have all the same complexities than we have. And still it looks a bit easier. So I think that we need a bit of a paradigm shift ahead of us. And let me just make one story.
Yes, please.
Is it, Christine, all right if I say something about this morning? Because we were at the committee this morning, and we were discussing about the possibility of could something be certified in ATM, and having had now a pleasure and honor to work with also with industry and vision people who have a vision about future, and when they are saying that something which is today a product, in the future it's piece of software functionality somewhere there in the cloud, and it's absolutely critical that it works. So it's safety critical, and then our audience says that I want a law which says exactly what will be certified. How do we write a law where we say that thing which is done in a completely new manner, it will be, you simply cannot do it in the old way. You need to do it differently. You need to be able to have a certification specification where you say to that industry that make sure that this functionality works like this. So just as an example that we need a bit of new way of thinking this issue.
Christine wants to react to that, and then I'll come to you, Anna.
Yeah, I think this is where it's important. I'm coming back to the SESAR 3 joint undertaking. It's important that in this new generation of joint undertaking, we really have all the players represented to work together early on. So that, for instance, when the research, while the technological development projects are implemented or are even proposed, that people bring EASA along, like, for instance, they do in clean aviation, because ultimately EASA is dealing with safety, interoperability, access to the market, and the more in an early phase EASA is involved in all this, the quicker access to the market will afterwards be. And this is really where this paradigm of working together, even at stages where in stricto sensu, if it was not done under the heading of a joint undertaking, it would all be competitors doing things together, has an important place. And it's really churning out mature solutions is one of the key things for this joint undertaking. If we are to say, well, certain of these solutions we want everybody to deploy by law, we have given EASA an important role to assess the maturity of what comes out. And we have also instruments in place with the new SESAR deployment manager, for instance, then to accelerate the deployment on the ground. But let's also be clear that this industry cannot forever be on the drip. When I speak about deployment, on the drip of public money helping to do the deployment. I think this great collaboration in SESAR at one stage should also enable stakeholders to do things together without necessarily having public money behind, simply because they have developed technology together, they are convinced about it, and they want to see it happening.
But that is not to deny the importance of public money as part of the equation, because this is something that was talked about very much this morning, how central, how essential it is, particularly for an industry. And we talked this morning about the context in which we're having this conversation. So the collapse of aviation during COVID, the situation it finds itself in. And everyone was talking about how do we maintain that ability to invest. And the public money was seen as crucial. So just want you to clarify that. Sorry, Anna, then I'll come to you. But
there are certainly certain circumstances where even state aid has a place, right, during a crisis, whatever. But what I'm saying is this is a small industry. Everybody knows each other. Even the newcomers from the drone industry get to know, make themselves known and know the others. So this industry should not entirely behave like, oh, we move on only if somebody puts money on the table. They should have a self-interest in developing as an industry. And I must say, sometimes this is what the industry is lacking to display this. Maybe after 15 years of SESAR, the passion is no longer there, but we want to see from you this passion that you are driving things together and that you are in the driving seat, and not whenever we speak with you, where is the money that we can do it?
Okay, I'm sure there might be some reaction to that from our audience, but before I go out to them, Anna, coming back to the new entrants and the challenge this poses, from a standardization perspective, are we where we need to be in developing the standards for this new world of aviation?
Maybe we should ask them that question. but I think we're on the right path. I think with EASA having created or still being in the process of creating the regulatory frameworks for the drones, for the VTOLs, and as it goes forward, we've been planning very closely with EASA, with the stakeholders, the whole standardization portfolio, and I think we're on a good path to having the standards in place that we need, but I think we can also do more. Looking at where we should be standing, where we do stand, I think we're good, but we can always improve. Nevertheless, I think we also have to see that we're here in a lot of those new entrant working groups leading the way. We have, I think in Europe we're quite unique, having the special condition for VTOL, for example, in place, with a working group that brings together, I think the last headcount was more than 500 people from all over the world writing the standards. So this is quite unique. And I think this is unique not only on the new entrants, but this is unique also in a lot of the ATM work that we do coming out of SESAR. Looking at the remote tower working group, we have over 200 people in the room writing standards, which then I think we had again last week during the ICAO assembly a paper, I believe it was from India, saying ICAO should recognize ED240, the standard that has been developed as an outcome of SESAR. So we are really leading the world, and I think, Andreas, you mentioned this morning, the SESAR light shines brightly all over the world, and I think this reflects, and this reflects also the world is looking to us, and we do have to show what we have achieved.
Thank you very much. Let me go out to the room now for any questions or comments. Does anybody want to join in our discussion at this stage? Anybody want to react to what Christine was saying? If I can tempt you. Well, they're all being very diplomatic now. Okay, for the moment, not, but I will give you another opportunity in a little while. You see, I wanted to come back on something you said right at the beginning, because you said we have all the ingredients, but you said we have a tendency to speak and plan more than we actually do. What for you is the key? Why do you think? Is it just because speaking and planning is easier than doing? Or are there obstacles that we really need to overcome? And if there are, where should our focus be?
Maybe I don't know enough, but sometimes, I mean, sometimes with Alan, we debate on certain things, and he tells me how many good things have been done on a local level, And then these big things where you need to synchronize over the whole Europe, and these are of course a bit more visible, but I mean that it is difficult, and we can see that sometimes those projects, they take a lot of time and so on. So my question, and I don't know, maybe we even have in SESAR 3 the solution, because by the way, we have many things in the pipeline at the moment. So many of the questions, I mean, that we haven't implemented them. Many things that Christine also said, that ESA can do this and that, and we are happy, we think it's the right thing, but we haven't yet done it because it's in the pipeline. But just a question, in all the good SESAR research which creates good, do we have a performance scheme which somehow, do we communicate the outcome? Do we communicate the positive outcome? And I'm pretty sure that if there's new research on 3 ANSPs, they get a great result. It's easier with the performance scheme. They have, and if this is communicated, I'm sure it creates 3 others who would be very curious to do
keep the
mic,
the same, just because we're also recording
who would be very curious to do the same thing. And the same thing with the big synchronized things. Where we have difficulties, do we have the number which is increasing with the minus sign that this doesn't work? Or when we implement something which is good on European level, are we able to somehow communicate and summarize the positive end result? And I think that if that would help a lot. And just to pick up what Anna said, I had a pleasure to work for years in Montreal, and in a way, Europe is not like there because that's not the way, because it should be a state doing everything. But in fact, we are kind of a mini ICAO in the sense that we are doing things for many, and it is unique in the world. And I would say that if there would be a will, or even global level, they would learn a lot from what Europe does, because it's not at all so easy for many others to do things together. So. Not to be so negative, so just to say.
No, absolutely. And Anna, can I just pick up on that in terms of how does Europe compare when it comes to the development of standards in this area? Are we leading? And in terms of global standards, how well are we doing in terms of developing those as well?
I think, yes, we're doing quite well. The world is looking to us. I think SESAR is really something that the world looks towards, and all the work that we are doing in terms of the standards development, whether it comes out of SESAR or of other research projects, those are recognized internationally. And the fact that more than half of our work program is being carried out jointly with international organizations, our partner organizations in the US, RTCA, SAE, lots of the others. We have links with the International Standards Organization. We have links with many other standardization bodies that do develop standards which are relevant here and which recognize the quality of the work that is being done by Eurokai and the likes. At the same time, we learn a lot from them also. We learn that maybe we don't need to develop every standard on our own. We can maybe take standards from other industries, pharmaceutical, banking industry, many others. We've had a session a couple of months ago where we've looked at what especially they've done on the cybersecurity side, for example. Do we really need to develop our own standards for each of those aspects, or can we take and learn from what those industries have done and bring that also into our standardization processes and into our work, not only on standardization but overall into our work and benefit from that?
Which is something that links to what you said earlier. If you could react to that, Christine, and also to the point on communications.
Yeah, I think to make it a bit more exciting, for the first time on this panel, I have to disagree with you, Jussi. And that concerns your statement that don't we communicate sufficiently, or how is it not known what in terms of progress is achieved? I think there is a lot of communication from the SESAR deployment manager, from SESAR, also from the master plan process that demonstrates how we are evolving. On the performance regulation side, but this only concerns one stakeholder group, the performance review body is publishing the billions of money that are saved in every performance period via the economic regulation system I referred to in the beginning. We are operating in a unique constellation with all the EU states in Europe. So I think one can measure progress, and progress has been measured, but again, the good thing is we are all impatient people. We all want to improve things, and we want to have it happening quicker. And this is where, in our inward-looking bubble, I think, where our discussions are ongoing about how can we indeed really accelerate.
You see?
I'm sure in English there's a saying that if you make a mistake and then you start to, you know...
When you're in a hole, stop digging.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Christine, it might be that it's my lousy English also what was here. I fully agree that the system, our ecosystem communicates a lot. But the question is that if all these good things, this new research has created changes by the NSP, all these good things, if all these things make positive impact, why are the NSPs... Why do they have a problem with the performance scheme and RP4? I mean, I would just take more orders from Alan and the others from SJU and make more of those changes, and it would be easier with the performance scheme. So the communication related to the actual enhancement, which is a concrete, tangible thing, and that's my communication point.
Absolutely. Anyone want to join in this discussion? I see one here. If we could get a microphone, Christine, over to just in front of the camera. There, thank you very much. No, this side, this side. Can you wave at Christine again so she can see you? Thank you very much.
No throwing objects.
And no throwing objects, yeah. Keep it civilized.
Marouel Chida from SESAR CU. Thank you for the discussion. Now, SESAR 3 has an obligation to accelerate the market uptake of the solutions. And let's try to be a bit more concrete. So now SESAR 2020 is going to deliver a batch of solutions. What are you guys doing to accelerate the market uptake of these solutions? Are you helping in some way? And maybe what the others should do to accelerate the implementation of these in the real world?
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, we have another one here, Christine, just in the second row here. There we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Olivia Nunes, also from the SJU. So just complementing to what Marwan was asking, I wanted to ask about the our uptake outside of Europe, so the projection for the European industry to bring this, to export these technologies. What can we do to make this happen? Are we communicating correctly? What's the way forward? Because it was said before, SESAR has a projection internationally.
Thank you very much indeed. So not only developed in Europe, but then deployed everywhere, anywhere. Any other questions, comments before we come back on those two related questions? Okay, who would like to kick us off? Christine, please.
On the what are we doing in order to accelerate market uptake? I wasn't here with you in the morning, but you know that we have, on the one hand, the common project regulations, where we are prescribing, after a lengthy consultation process, etc., an agreement between airports, airspace users, air navigation service providers, the military, what needs to be deployed by when. I think that alone shows that that process alone means that also there needs to be consequences if people are not sticking to the law, which the Commission is also prepared to start, and we have done so in the past. Data link is an example. Free use airspace deployment at national level is coming up at the end of this year. So if you so want, that is the stick part. The carrot part is the possibility to get co-funding for the deployment, where we are trying to benefit the ones who want to deploy quicker. I'm sure that the call from which is currently out was also mentioned this morning, where basically it's the occasion now to present projects in relation to CP1, the legal framework, in order to have this implemented. And we also have introduced a system by which, for instance, when projects are presented in the CNS domain, when there is a component for an improved synchronization between the airspace users and the ground segment, there is an increased funding rate, and if it is even combined with some decommissioning, then once again the funding goes up. So there is a system of incentives out there. We are also thinking of carrying this forward then for the regulated part of the industry in the performance plans, where we can work with restructuring cost in order to also make things rolled out at the ground in a quicker way than in the past. When it comes to the external dimension, you had Henry Kololai here in the morning, who should, I don't know, by now be sitting on a plane to Southeast Asia. And he is not going on a single trip outside Europe where he would not promote SESAR and SESAR technologies outside Europe. Which means that by consequence, also the SESAR Joint Undertaking has many memoranda of understanding with important industrial nations, by which then partners outside Europe are actively engaging in rolling out technology that was created here. And I think that is looking at it from a global competitiveness perspective. This is precisely what all our support with Horizon Europe is about. We want to change things in order to make the European society, the European economy, climate better, but we also want to be leading around the world. And I think from our side there is a lot of engagement in helping the European industry. Sometimes we have the impression that outside Europe it's easier to deploy new technologies than in old Europe.
Anna, do you want to react to that at all? Because I then want to ask you about, we've heard quite a lot about Christine's expectations for SESAR. I'd like to ask you for yours. But Anna, on this point of take-up.
Sure. So first of all, on Marwan's point on the take-up, maybe we're constantly looking at what are the priorities, what kind of standards do we need to put up, how do we also accelerate the standardization processes. We've, as I mentioned before, we're able to push out standards within a couple of months as compared to years when we look a few years back. So, of course, depending on the complexity of the subject, but the process is there to be quick, and we can be. We're looking at this regularly in our technical advisory committee. We look at that in the EASCG, the EU SCG for UAS, in the cybersecurity standards coordination group. In so many other groups, and we really need to make sure that we have the buy-in and the commitment from the members and from the industry to develop those standards, because in the end those standards will only be as good as the collective inputs that come to them, and the speed of the standards will, and the development process will also depend on that. So I think this is a really important point, but it's not, you know, a couple of years ago, the accusation standards are slow was true. Today, that's not the case anymore. On the other point regarding international uptake, I think the example I just brought a couple of minutes ago on states outside the EU looking at what we develop, what is being put out, what standards are available. I think this is really a prime example. the world is looking towards SESAR and is looking towards Europe. And we have, you know, we're very good at criticizing, and this is not going fast enough, and this is not what we need, and everything. But we do achieve a lot of things, as we said a few minutes ago. And that is being recognized outside. And maybe the name Eurokai is a bit misleading, because our standards are not only European, they are recognized, they're globally applicable, and they're recognized worldwide. We know Japan, for example, is using a lot of those standards. The South Asian hemisphere, they are looking at using the standards, and they are looking at using also the results and bringing those results into the more open standards and regulatory framework actually allows this transposition as well.
Thank you very much. Jussi,
I need to do a few words on the market uptake, because it is very close to our heart. I mean, that what is obvious that in the new SESAR 3 package, there's our world changes with that in the sense that we didn't have much role earlier in this issue. So there are a lot of opportunities there, including, for example, the possibility for us to be involved with the consortia in the proposing for the calls. So of course that's a new role. We haven't done it earlier, but that would exactly be the early involvement in the process, and there are initial contacts are there, and how can I say it? It won't be easy. But we are organizing ourselves so that we could be a good partner, good neighbor in that regard. Maybe just to mention also that Commission has asked us also to look at the CP1 maturity, and it's not, we are not doing it in the sense of trying to name and shame if the story is not good, but it might also be that it's kind of everything is perfect, but just in order to help also in the system that if the architect should do differently things in order to, when you have these synchronized solutions. And then, of course, bilaterally between the Joint Undertaking and EASA, I mean that I'm very happy and proud of the efforts we have done during the 1 or 2 last years, so that we really communicate, we work, we even get a bit finance for the work we do, and of course colleagues in SJU, they know where we are needed better than us, we do, and we have some resources also to put into that. So good things in that sense, not yet ready made, but in the pipeline.
Thank you very much. We are moving to the end of our time. And as I say, Christine, you gave us very clearly what you expect hope for from SESAR 3. So the first part of this question is really for Jussi and for Anna, but the second part is to all of you. The first part is, what are your expectations? What implications do you think all of these issues we've been discussing have for SESAR 3, and what is your key priority for action, your key next step, if we are to really mobilize, accelerate this transformation? I'll start with Jussi and Christine, just your key priority, but your expectations from SESAR 3 and your key priority, whether it is for SESAR or for yourselves or for other actors. Internally, we have identified air traffic control licensing and ground equipment framework, conformity assessment framework, as the strategic things which we need to work hard on. Then, of course, as said already earlier, everything what is now put on paper in this ecosystem, which is the SESAR 3, in order to implement that successfully, part of that is the thing what we learn with CP1, whether it is a perfect or whether there's room to improve, how to do the next ones. For those 3 priorities, I think would be in our cosmos in order to make SESAR to be even better than what it is today. Thank you very much. Anna?
I think for us it's really being at the pulse of what's happening, understanding what the industry needs, understanding what's coming out of the big programs like SESAR, like many of the other big R&D programs, smaller R&D projects, understanding what we need to be doing to help the community move along in order to enable the deployment, whether that is through a common project or more traditional deployments. I think that is really the key priority. And in terms of the expectation from SESAR, really, I think this is going back to the point about collaboration. I think this earlier engagement, this earlier awareness, this earlier joint planning mechanisms will really help us deliver that. Deliver our part, which is a small part, fine, but it's a crucial part. Being able to bridge that gap, this industrialization gap, between the R&D phase towards deployment, and that is really something that we'll be working with the joint undertaking and also the deployment manager colleagues in the
Thank you very much. Christine, you have the last word.
Well, I would hope that as this is a network industry, that the network spirit incorporating new partners in the network will prevail in the SESAR 3 joint undertaking, that we will get good and mature solutions for deployment. And in return, I think the Commission is very much committed in helping the European Parliament and the Member States to come to a modern setup of law.
I like the word helping there.
Well, that's our role. We are facilitators. And clearly, there is a chance out there that needs to be embraced, because otherwise, I think we can no longer claim that the legal framework we have is conducive for the digital European sky. So.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, will you join me in thanking our panel very much indeed for a terrific discussion? Very grateful to you.